told you, I'm a man of my word. All you care about is money. This technology serves a better class. And I'm gonna give it to you. Not about money. It's about
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be talking about my brand new upper receiver line. This is, of course, you can probably tell by the title of the video, this is the Recce Pro. Now, before we get into the video, I do need to thank somebody very special, and that is, of course, all of you guys. Because the only reason that I'm continuing to make uppers and branch out into different things is because of your guys' support, helping me out, pushing me in the right directions, giving feedback on what it is that I do. And so I do want to say thank you to you guys very much. So, in this video, we are going to be going through my plans for the Pro line in general, and of course, the specifics on the Recce Pro. And something else that I want to say before we get too far in the video is that I know that throughout the entire process of upgrading all of the Mark series as well as now adding the Pro line, there's been a lot of additive processes that I've done. For instance, lapping the upper receiver, bedding the barrel, pinning the gas blocks, and on my original Mark 1s, Mark 2s, and Mark 3s, not all of those processes were in place yet. So, as a free upgrade to anyone who supported me all the way back there, bought my original Mark 1s, Mark 2s, or Mark 3s, the first run of Mark 3s, if you want those additive processes done, if you send them into me, I will, of course, do those upgrades for free for you and send them back. So, again, that is just kind of a thank you guys for those early adopters when all of those processes weren't yet in place. I do still want to take care of you guys, and again, I stand behind all of my products, so that is a free upgrade if you want. Go ahead and send it in. I'll get all the work done and send it back to you. And now getting on to the Recce Pro itself, of course, the most important part of this build is going to be the name. Now, I know people online like to argue about what's an SPR, what's a Recce, and well, that's too short to be this or that's too long to be that. It's just a name. It really doesn't matter whatsoever. So this is the Recce Pro. In the Pro line, there will probably be a Battle Rifle Pro and a CQB Pro at some point eventually. But the Pro line in general is basically a tasteful upgrade over the Mark series. The Mark series is always going to be the foundation. They are all very, very basic Mil-Spec featured ARs that are put together, you know, with quality barrels, quality BCGs, but everything else surrounding that is very basic, very Mil-Spec. So the Pro line has some very nice upgrades in all of those areas that needed an upgrade. So the most important part of the Recce Pro, this one is a 13.7-inch Rosco barrel. This is the Rosco Purebred Barrel. Now, the difference between the Bloodline and the Purebred barrels is one, material choice. These are, of course, 416R stainless steel versus 4150 chrome moly vanadium. And the main difference between those two steel types is the 416R stainless steel has a little bit better harmonics, so you're generally speaking going to be getting a little bit more accuracy out of them, which is why most match rifles and PRS rifles are going to have a stainless steel barrel. However, the downside of that in a gas gun is that you do reduce your barrel life by around 50%. So we are still offering the Focustripp barrel for free on the Recce Pros, though again, these are tuned to a little bit more accuracy, hence the Recce name, a little bit more accuracy at intermediate distances versus just pure volumes of fire. So these are very, very nice barrels by Rosco. These are their purebred barrels. This is a 13.7 mid-length gas system, 223 Wylde chambering. For those of you who don't know, 223 Wylde is not a real spec, so different manufacturers can do different things with 223 Wylde, which can be good and bad. You can get some companies that call it 223 Wylde, but really it's more of a 223 or more of a 556. I believe that Rosco does do a very good job with their chamberings, and again, the 223 Wylde is designed to be able to take advantage of the higher pressures of 556 and the better accuracy potential of 223. So 223 Wylde, again, with this material choice and gas system length, is the appropriate chambering when, again, you're trying to eke out as much accuracy as possible. Now, mid-length gas system, of course, this one here does come with a 4140 pinned gas block, so it is a pinned steel non-adjustable gas block from the factory. This might be a little controversial, but from the factory, these were a .075 gas port size. All of the barrels that I had were a .075. I've heard other people claim that they're a .076. It could just be the fact that my gauges are to the plus side on tolerance and somebody else is using a minus side tolerance gauge. So my barrels were .075, so I tested a bunch of them, and none of them would run M193, my SDI M193, unsuppressed with just carbine springs, carbine buffers. So to me, that was a bit of a problem, so I went ahead and I opened up these 13.7 mids. These are all opened up to a .081. Now, some people might say, oh, well, now that's overgassed. Well, it's absolutely not. You can look in all of the intro footage and all of the shooting footage. Unsuppressed, you're going to be ejecting M193 at about 3:30 to 4 o'clock, and you're going to be ejecting steel case ammunition on the bleeding edge of reliability. You can make them a little bit softer for dedicated suppressor use, but since most people still aren't running suppressors, though I do recommend them to eventually get into that sort of thing, right now most people still aren't running suppressed, and again, tuning them this way means that they will out of the box run anything that you want and still be incredibly soft. You can again watch the footage. These are incredibly soft shooting upper receivers. They'll still run whatever you want, and if you want to run a suppressor, go ahead and start adding buffer weights in the back. Go to H1, H2, H3 as appropriate for your ammunition and your suppressor. Now, something else that Rosco did very right on these barrels is that they gave them a 1-in-8 twist. Now, a 1-in-8 twist versus a 1-in-7 twist, there's a lot of argument about which one is better. In general, you're going to get a better accuracy over a wider variety of loads with a 1-in-8 twist than you would with a 1-in-7. Now, there's a lot of debate about that, and it's really going to be dependent on your specific ammunition and your specific barrel, because each individual barrel, even though these are all from the same batch, each individual barrel is still going to, like certain loads more than others. So a 1-in-8 twist in general will give you a wider amount of accuracy over a wide variety of loads. 1-in-7s are optimized for basically heavy grains only, or I should say they of course can shoot lighter loads accurate as well, but again, they're optimized more for the heavier, longer bullets. So in my opinion, a 1-in-8 twist is the way to go when you're trying to squeeze out the most amount of accuracy over whatever you're shooting through it. Though again, when we're talking about twist rates 1-in-8 versus 1-in-7, we really are splitting hairs. Now, another thing about these barrels is that these were beautifully engraved by Hyperion Precision. All of the Pro line upper receivers will have their barrels engraved and serialized, so this will be yours. This is the only unique one. That's to whoever, of course, buys these. This is, of course, the Recce Pro -4, so this is number 4. This will be the test upper, which should probably be live on the website if these aren't all sold out by then, of course. Now, it should also be noted that only the first 10 will have the engraving done by Hyperion Precision. The rest of these will be engraved at the factory by Rosco. That is an OEM process that they offer from the factory, but it was going to add another 2 to 3 weeks, and Trevor over at Hyperion Precision really hooked me up. He stayed up late and got these barrels all done for you guys so that I could get these out the door. So that is about it for the barrel. These are really, really nice barrels. We will talk about accuracy and the rest of the setup, of course, as we go on. The muzzle device that is stock with all of these, there are no options. Well, there's one option for muzzle device, which we'll talk about in just a second. The muzzle device that comes stock on all of the Recce Pros is a 3-prong flash hider from Breek Arms. Now you will notice that these are externally threaded for the blast shield that also is from Breek Arms. The outside thread pitch is 13/16 by 16. I am not sure if that is compatible with any sort of suppressors or anything else like that, but the muzzle device is 4140. It does an excellent job of mitigating flash. It does have a little bit of that tuning fork ping, as you'll probably hear in the intro and of course some of the shooting footage we're rolling in, but overall, it does a very, very good job of mitigating flash, not really directing any recoil left, round, up, or down. It doesn't push you around. It just directs all of that right back into your shoulder, and of course is compatible with the blast shields that are sold separately. Although the test upper will come with this, I really just picked up the blast shield just to test it out and see what it did, basically. Now, there's also a second option on the website for muzzle devices, and that is going to be for the Sons of Liberty Gunworks Nox, the suppressor-ready version. The reason for that is the 13.7 is about the shortest barrel length you can get away with still having a pinned and welded muzzle device that's not completely unusable. So, the muzzle device option for the Sons of Liberty Gunworks Nox is an extra $100, but that's literally just the cost of the muzzle device itself. So if you select that option, it will take a week and a half for me to get the muzzle device in. I will pin and weld it for free, of course, because you're basically only paying for the muzzle device itself. So I will pin and weld it on there and get that out to you, and this will be a legal rifle length. Because again, 13.7, so this is technically a pistol or firearm, technically, because this is over a 26-inch overall length, according to the ATF. So do with that what you will, though again, there is an option for pin and weld Sons of Liberty Gunworks Nox muzzle device. Now, moving back to the second half of the heart and soul of any AR-15 upper receiver, that is, of course, going to be our bolt carrier group. Now, as you can tell, this is a nickel boron BCG. Now, these are direct from Toolcraft. I did finally get set up as a Toolcraft distributor. Basically, you had to send them 5 figures for them to even be able to talk to you. So now we have very beautiful Toolcraft completely coated nickel boron BCGs as standard with all of the pro upper receivers and possibly also the mark upper receivers moving forward. So what we have here is an 8620 carrier that is again standard Mil-Spec geometry, but again coated in a very beautiful nickel boron finish. Toolcraft does a very good job with all of their machinings. The coatings look very, very good. On top of that, at this point, as you can tell, the one thing nice about nickel boron is as you shoot it more, the color actually changes a little bit. They start out a very bright, very flashy silver color almost, and then as you shoot them and more oil kind of gets in and around them and dirt and grime, all that other sort of fun stuff, they kind of have this nice, really smoky sheen to them. So it is a color change that personally I really like. They are incredibly slick, incredibly lubricious. Nickel boron, depending on the company, is either their top tier coating or their second. You know, it's between titanium nitride, nickel boron, and like Geissele uses their, you know, proprietary nano weapon coating, which is also very, very good. At this point, this BCG is at about 500-600 rounds, 200 rounds of match ammunition, and then the rest, you know, just M193 and some steel case as well. One thing that is very nice about nickel boron is it is, again, incredibly hard, and there is quite literally zero wear on this BCG. The carrier itself has no wear on any of the rails, and all of the lugs still look perfect. Something that I did forget to mention as well, on the Rosco 13.7 Purebred barrels, the barrel extension itself, where the lugs meet up and everything, of course, is also nickel boron coated. So all of the touching, moving components on the AR-15, the Pro line, is of course coated in a very beautiful nickel boron. Now, we also have a 4140 gas key with true grade 8 fasteners that are staked to Mil-Spec. We have a bolt that is 9310 and MPI tested. There was a slight price difference between Carpenter 158 and 9310. 9310, people like to claim that it is stronger. It is technically stronger, but it's also cheaper, which is why most people prefer 9310 over Carpenter 158, because it's not only is it a little bit stronger in some scenarios, but it's also, in general, a little bit cheaper as well. So these are, again, the 9310 MPI tested bolts. So everything geometry-wise, size, weight, forward assist cuts is standard Mil-Spec, but of course it's coated inside and out with the beautiful, very tough, very resilient nickel boron. Now, Something that I will say is that when I get these bolt carriers in a batch of, 20, 30, 40 at a time, I go ahead and I take all of them apart and I make sure that they all have the proper components. Everything feels right. The ejector feels good. The extractor has good force on it. They do use the Viton O-ring enhanced on their extractors. Some people dislike that because some cheaper companies will try to use an O-ring to cover up for the fact that their springs are really weak. I can attest to you from firsthand experience, these springs are not weak whatsoever. You have an immense amount of extraction force, again, on the extractor here. So overall, I think Toolcraft did an exceptional job on these BCGs, and honestly, they're some of the nicest BCGs on the market, probably better than like 99.9% of what's currently out there. So at the heart and soul of the Pro line, or the Recce Pro upper receiver, we have a very well machined, very well thought out 416R stainless steel barrel from Rosco that is mid-length. It has all the proper settings, nickel boron extension, everything that you would want to see in it. It has a recessed target crown up front, if I haven't mentioned that already. Something funny about their profile as well, they claim it's a government profile. It's really not. Instead of having the very fat section here at the very end of the barrel, it's hard to see with this handguard on there, but it actually has a very nice step down right after the gas block journal to help keep some of that weight off the front end. So overall, the barrel and BCG, it is very difficult to ask more for this setup. If you were looking for like a true hard use tens of thousands of rounds barrel, you would of course want to go with something like 4140, 4150, and chrome lined, of course, on top of that. But for more of a precision-oriented, mid-range Recce build, I think that this is about the best that it's going to get. So now let's go ahead and talk about Breek arms, because they are, of course, the manufacturer of the muzzle devices, the handguards, and the charging handles that we have on the Recce Pro. So the handguard itself is the RG2 or the RG2S model, I believe, which is like the rigid rail system or something like that. So the way I came about knowing about Breek arms, because before this build, I literally had no idea that they even existed. I was actually perusing one of my local gun stores in Centralia, Washington, East County, or not East County Guns, actually. This one here was Tactical Blackout, if you want to go check out Mike over there. But I was actually perusing his shop, and he actually had some of their stuff in there, and I noticed the prices were pretty darn good for American-made handguards and for a true wedge lock system, which we will talk about in just a minute. So then that very same day, I went ahead and gave him a call and got set up as a dealer, which is how I came about using some of their components for this Recce Pro. So the handguard itself is, of course, an Mlock handguard. We have Mlock at the 3, 6, and 9, which is very standard. On this build, I wasn't really necessarily worried about having 7-sided Mlock as more of a mid-range, not necessarily like a night fighting type of gun, although, of course, it could absolutely be used for that. Now, the RG2S has these very nice solid windows here at the end of the handguard. That, to me, is going to provide a little bit of additional rigidity at the end of your rail where it's the weakest, because, of course, it's going to be the strongest here at the base where it attaches to your receiver extension and your steel barrel nut. And of course, the further out it goes, the weaker and weaker it gets. Now, it's also a bit of an aesthetic thing because it kind of covers up your gas block and maybe prevents you getting some of that gas blow off from the gas block, which there really isn't much on these anyways. But the main thing that I was concerned about these handguards is that, one, they have an incredibly high quality steel barrel nut that is very, very nicely machined. It is true 6061 T6 aluminum hard coat anodized Mlock where you need it. A full length Picatinny rail on top, which is how I prefer all of my builds, to have a full Picatinny rail on top, unless it's for a different application like a race gun or something like that. Full length Picatinny on top. That is not scalloped out. When you scallop out and lightweight your Picatinny rail on top, think of this essentially as like the backbone of your rail. So if you remove, material, it will make a lighter rail, but you're removing material from what basically holds your rail together. So a full length, full strength Picatinny rail on top. And the most important feature that I was concerned about is the very, very nice wedge lock system that they're using in the bottom. Now, most handguards are going to be using anti-rotation tabs, very, very small anti-rotation tabs that will basically only stop it from rotating, you know, maybe 1 or 2 degrees in either direction. The Midwest Industries combat rails have the tightest anti-rotation tabs. Well, actually that and the Geisley also had incredibly tight anti-rotation tabs, and that would basically not allow it to move more than like a half a degree either direction. Though that's going to vary between upper receiver, of course. But the reason I wanted a true wedge lock system is a wedge lock system provides a different sort of force on your barrel nut. So these wedge locks are aluminum blocks that basically wedge down into each other, and then you tighten them together. Now, this creates a bi-directional force. So the first force is, of course, they're directly contacting the steel barrel nut, pulling the handguard down and simultaneously pushing up on the barrel nut as well. So what this creates is a true total lockup on the barrel nut versus just a clamp, which a clamp on the bottom is a good way to do it. However, a clamp is really only going to provide contact or tension on the lower half of your barrel nut. So with the wedge lock system, we have 2 very large wedge blocks of aluminum with steel hardware, of course, and these are torqued down to a whopping 60 inch-pounds. Even the Midwest Industries Combat, those only rate you up to 40 inch-pounds of force on the actual handguard screws themselves. The AIM Sports that I've used on a lot of my the Mark series builds, those are only at 30 to 35. The UTGs are like 25. So not only is the wedge lock a superior mounting system for your handguard, you are also able to get an immense amount of torque onto it. And again, it's concentric around the entire barrel nut using a bidirectional force. So the wedge lock system, like you'll see in like the wedge lock rails from Triarch and of course Era Precision as well. Now we do have one more component from Breek Arms, and that is actually going to be their Warhammer Mod 2 charging handle. Now, the thing about this charging handle is it is machined completely out of 7075 T6 aluminum. There are a lot of cheaper, even Mil-Spec style charging handles that are made out of 6061, and the difference between 7075 and 6061 is a very large structural increase in strength, anywhere from 2 to 2.5 times as strong depending on the application. So with something that is applying direct force to your bolt carrier group and allowing you to clear sometimes terrible malfunctions, you need a charging handle that, one, you can get good leverage on and is also incredibly strong. So the entire charging handle is made out of 7075. It is a little bit of a slimmer design than like what you're going to get on the Airborne from Geisley or the standard Geisley or Radiant Raptor. However, it still has a decent amount of material here in the back. It is very nicely knurled. On top of that, we have relief cuts in the charging handle itself to try to vent away additional gases if you're running it suppressed, which we did, of course, run this gun suppressed as well, and it shot beautifully. It also has a very high shelf in the back that kind of butts up to the back of your upper receiver, which in theory will help to direct some of those gases up and again away from the shooter's face. Now, a charging handle can help a little bit when it comes to shooting suppressed, but it's only going to help a little bit, and this does try its hardest. So overall, it is of course an ambidextrous charging handle that allows you to get immense amount of force. If you're using something like an LPVO, even with an offset red dot, you can still, of course, get very quick, very easy access to it. It's not overly big to where it's going to be catching on everything no matter what you're doing. For the price of the component and, of course, the quality of the material and machining that they were able to get out of this, it is easily the best value charging handle on the market. It's at a fraction of what some of the other guys are charging, like, you know, 120 bucks in some cases for a little bit of extra aluminum on the back end. For me, I don't necessarily need an extended ambidextrous charging handle, but it is a very nice quality of life feature. And that is one of the things that I did, of course, want to do with the Pro line of upper receivers. I wanted to tastefully improve all of the little areas without increasing the price too much over the base Mark series. But of course, we have a stock, very nice 3-prong muzzle device. We have a much better handguard, in my personal opinion. We have an excellent barrel, excellent BCG, ambidextrous charging handle. Again, these barrels are all engraved. All of the Pro line barrels will be engraved. And we also, on the first 10, we have the barrels engraved by Hyperion Precision. They did a great job. And we also, on the Mil-Spec upper receiver, which is actually our last part, which we might as well talk about, We have a stainless steel forward assist, and a stainless steel dust cover pin. Very nice little accents. This is basically kind of like a two-tone finish, if you will. You have a silver barrel, silver-ish BCG, and then a little bit of stainless accents on the upper receiver. Now, almost all of these upper receivers are Aero Precision. I believe 8 out of the first 10 are Aero Precision. This one specifically is not. This one here is a Cero Forge, which I believe is finished by Anderson. There's really not a big difference between Mil-Spec upper receivers. They're all perfectly Mil-Spec. They are not T-mark. They are all 7075 T6 aluminum, hard coat anodized, and in assembly, I've assembled hundreds of these at this point. There is very, very little difference between any quality Mil-Spec upper receiver. So that is the main component rundown on the Recce Pro. Now, when it comes to building, assembling, and testing, that is very standard to our Mark series of upper receivers as well. We have a 4140 gas block from CAC Industries, just a very standard 0.750 gas block. It's a phosphate gas block that is also pinned in place. On top, of course, these Rosco barrels are dimpled from the factory, so we have the rear set screw in the dimple. One thing that I will knock Rosco on is that those rear dimples are incredibly small. They could definitely make them a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to align, but that is a very small assembly gripe. Now, these are, of course, pinned in place. On top of that, the gas block set screws are set to 25 inch-pounds, and they are also red high temperature thread locked in place. I will say they are very difficult to get off, especially if you've been shooting them a lot. If you need to change the handguard out, that is something I am totally willing to do. Just go ahead and send it in and I will do that for you so that you don't strip out one of your gas block screws. Not naming anyone specifically, but that is, again, they are meant to not move. So if you're trying to change out the handguard or something, you need the gas block to come out, go ahead and contact me first and we'll walk you through all of that. Now, on top of that, of course, every upper receiver, the very first thing I do when I get a batch of upper receivers in is I lap the face of the upper receiver extension. What that means in theory is that you get the most concentric lockup between your barrel extension and your upper receiver extension, meaning that you have the most concentric pressure, the most repeatable accuracy that you're going to get out of that barrel and upper receiver combo. On top of that, we also bed the barrel to the upper receiver. We use a Loctite compound. It's a 620 or 626, I believe, which is a expanding and hardening compound. That's basically all Loctite is. In this case, what that does is it will fill in any of the invisible cracks and spaces between the barrel extension and, of course, the upper receiver extension as well. And when that sets and hardens on top of the lapped upper receiver and the properly torqued barrel, these barrel nuts are torqued down to 50 foot-pounds. Sequentially, that is just something I do with all of them. Anti-seize is, of course, applied to the threads before we tighten them down. So when it comes time for me to rebarrel them for you, that is a very easy process for me. So what that means at the end of the day is that you're going to be getting the most possible accuracy out of that barrel, upper receiver, BCG, and ammo combination. Now, we might as well go ahead and talk about accuracy. Accuracy is one of those things that's always controversial one way or the other. Now, everything that I put out is backed by my 1 MOA guarantee. You should be able to get 5 rounds within an inch of each other, or 1.07 inches, 1 MOA of each other at 100 yards using match ammunition. So, in my testing with these upper receivers, I did accuracy testing on these twice with a couple different optics. I used this SIG MSR 1:6, but that really wasn't enough magnification, so I also used a Monstrum 5-25. Not a great optic, but it does give me the magnification to be a little bit more precise. And we were able to get right around 1 MOA with the ammunition that I had on hand. Now, unfortunately, I am very limited in terms of my match loads that I have access to, so most of what I was using was ADI 69 grain match. I had some hand-loaded Mark 262, which is a 77 grain Sierra Match King load. It was hand-loaded by me, so not necessarily the most consistent thing in the world. And on top of that, I had some 68 grain Frontier from Hornady, or the bullets are from Hornady, I should say. That ammunition has really only ever shot good in one gun. So overall, the accuracy that I was able to get out of this, I was able to get a couple groups right around 1 MOA. And of course, with a better shooter and better ammunition, I have now no doubt whatsoever that you guys will also be able to attain 1 MOA accuracy. Now, As far as practical accuracy and actually shooting a 13.7 out to 500 yards, it's very, very easy. You can basically, once you have your BDC lined up, once you have your zero sorted out and rock solid, you're going to be able to walk it out from 0 to 500 yards, no problems whatsoever. And if you have a BDC and a good ammunition that your gun really likes, and you have all your dope set up, you could easily make first round impacts out to 500-600 yards. My intended use case was a more precision-oriented mid-range gun. Now, a 13.7 is still a very handy, very short package for the amount of capability that you're getting out. And again, if you do want the nocks pinned and welded at the end, it will be a rifle, a 16-inch legal rifle that you can do whatever the heck you want with it. And in that configuration will be the shortest and most handy 5.56 gun that you can get that still technically qualifies as a rifle without being an SBR and handing the ATF a couple $100 to do your paperwork. So now when it comes to actually shooting the Recce Pro right out of the box, it is an absolute dream to shoot. This will be very, very pleasant, even with full power M193 or M855. You're going to be able to absolutely burn down targets inside of 15, 20, 25 yards, again, depending on your specific skill level as well. And if you want to stretch it out to 500-600 yards, not going to be an issue as long as, of course, you're set up with your optic and ammunition choice. So overall, other than a specific race gun setup that I have, this is the softest upper receiver that I currently have. Again, these out of the box were a little bit too soft. The barrel's at a .075, so I did open them up to a .081, but even still, you'll see them in the intro, they are shooting absolutely lights out. So with all that being said, guys, if you want any more details on the Recce Pro, or you have any ideas about what I should do next, tasteful improvements or gaudy improvements as well, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Before we end the video, I do want to say thank you once again to all of you guys who have purchased any of my upper receivers. It is a huge boon to me personally that I get to keep doing this sort of thing, and you guys still enjoy what I'm putting out. Hopefully I'm putting out the best value that I can, which I believe that I am at the price points that I'm able to meet. And again, I do want to say thank you to all of you guys for watching and supporting over the last few years. It really does mean a lot. But with all of that being said, that is it for the Recce Pro. If you guys want all of the dirty specifics on any component in here, that will all be listed on the website. So with all that out of the way, thank you guys once again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace off.